Hogsty.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another quarantined episode of the Hogsty. This is Alex Zeese, your host with you today, and of course with me are my co-hosts Jamal and Steve. Guys, it's great to have everybody here. I'm sure, we've been talking more about our non-football life lately before the shows than the football stuff, but it's been an action-packed week for the Redskins, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess you could call this action-packed week. I don't know, but, I guess we'll
listen, man, this qualifies as action, dude.
Hey, it's off-season.
How about this? It's enough to keep us distracted. I put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think we'll win the off-season championship award this year, but at least we have stuff going on. But we have a guest, as we've been trying to have guests before each show pre-draft.
Not before each show.
Not
during
before
the show.
During each show pre-draft, before the draft. That's what I meant. Thank you.
It happens.
But yeah. Well, I'm still getting used to being the host. But our guest this week is Mark Tyler. He is a writer for Hogs Haven. He's a former college football player, currently a high school coach. He is really great at breakdowns. If you don't follow him on social media and you don't read what he's writing on Hogs Haven, then you're doing it wrong. I'll put it that way. I mean, you should read all our stuff too on our site, but you should read his stuff because he's really excellent. Mark, thank you for joining us today on the show.
Well, Alex, thank you for the gracious, kind words that you said, and Steve, Jamal, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it greatly. Definitely what Jamal just said. I was kind of laughing, but he said the perfect word. I mean, this is a distraction. I mean, we have everyday life. People are sitting home quarantined, and all this Redskins news that we can talk about, it gives us a great distraction. And I think we're all used to that at this time of year. The distraction is what we normally see. So as Redskins fans, we're used to it. But this is fun. I tell you what, this is fun.
Right. We're used to, like I said earlier, we want to be the off-season champions every year, for the first 20 years of Dan Snyder's career.
Don't throw the we into that, Kemosabe. I'm never interested in the off-season crown. Okay, don't use the term "we" to me.
Okay.
Well, if you ask a younger me, I would agree with Alex. I was with it. I wanted the Antoine Randall L's and T.J. Duckets, all that mess.
You're the guy out there that's rooting for Adam Archuleta, then.
Yeah.
I was at one point. I was what? You can't blame me. I was under 12 years old. I think.
Steve, if you can't get behind a slow, bulky, in the box, white free safety who really can't cover, I don't know what's wrong with you.
Let's get to Mark, okay? Let's get to his opinions.
All right, let's get to this free agency. I guess, Mark, we're going to start with you since you're our guest. What are your general thoughts on this free agency class that we're seeing the Redskins bring in right now? And do you think it's going to have any impact on the draft at this point or not?
So my thoughts are a little bit different than what we're seeing out there on Redskins social media right now. You go on Twitter, and all you see are people bashing the signings. Why aren't we spending money? We have enough money. Listen, I get that. And I can empathize with these fans who are a little bit frustrated. But we have a new sheriff in town. So I think everyone really has to realize that we have to give Ron his chance to do his thing here. What is very encouraging, at least as it seems on the outside, is Dan Snyder has taken a step back and is not involved in our process anymore. We can link many free agent signings going way back. Hainsworth, Sean, Archuleta. God, I remember the Donovan McNabb trade. I can remember the day it happened because I was actually going to have Easter dinner with my mom, and I got out of the car in the parking lot. She came out to hug me. She goes, "Do you hear what your team just did?" I'm like, "No." She goes, "You just traded for Donovan McNabb." So coming from my mom, I was almost embarrassed that I had to get that information. But going back to my point, I think it's rather refreshing. Now, would I have loved to see a solid linebacker added that we could potentially throw in there as a starter? There were some great names in there like Littleton, Campbell, Schobert. They're all guys that I think could have fit in great. I would have loved to have seen that, but do I mind us taking the slow, more calculated approach and filling these holes with depth? Not in the least. I think it's a smart move. And what people don't realize is there's still a lot of free agency left. There's still teams that are going to be cutting players before and after the. So we need to seriously sit back, let Ron, let Kyle do their thing. And we got to trust, and we got to just, hey, it can't get any worse than what it's been for the last 2 decades, right?
Yeah, by the way, let's summarize real quick for everybody what the Redskins have done in case you've been living under a rock. So this week, the Redskins franchise tagged Brandon Scherf, non-exclusive tag, which means that he can negotiate with other teams. And the Redskins get 2 first-round draft picks back if they chose to let him go, which they won't, but they could. They re-signed Nate Orchard. They re-signed John Bostic. I would assume under the 4-3, Nate Orchard's going to be a defensive end. Bostic's probably a Mike linebacker. Linebackers, they brought Thomas Davis in, who's about 180 years old, but he's still a solid player. Kevin Pierre-Louis, linebacker, re-signed. Kendall Fuller, the former Redskins corner. Mm-hmm. Sean Davis, the safety, most recently with Pittsburgh. Running back J.D. McKissick. Tight end Logan Thomas, and tackle Cornelius Lewis. Are there any of these guys that really stick out to you as let me say it this way. I think what most fans are frustrated with is none of these guys are really names, but I don't really care about the names. What I care about is how they play. Who of this group sticks out to you as a player who can really make a big impact on the Redskins?
Well, I think we all look to Fuller. I mean, his versatility is what's going to be key for our defense. You can put him on the outside if you need to, but I think he's best in the spot. Kansas City played him at free safety last year. I don't think his best spot is at free safety, but if you need to put him back there, he has the ability to play single high. So I think we point to Fuller immediately and look at him as a starter, at least a sub-starter, as a nickel corner. But the guy that probably stands out to me a little bit, who is kind of flying under the radar here, is Pierre-Louis. Now, there's a huge need for an offensive linebacker. When we get into our color coding scheme in a little bit, I'll kind of run you guys through that from my perspective. But this kid's a striker, and he's an amazing athlete playing outside linebacker. I mean, this kid's a 4-5 guy that can come up and just whack him. He can also cover. He has both hits. He can drop the hits. He can get sideline to sideline. So he may be a reserve, but I think this kid has some potential. If we need to put him in there, and he can play ball. The other guy too is Schweitzer, the guard center combo from Falcon. Mm-hmm. He's a big kid. He can move decently, for a guard. He's not going to wow you, but listen, if we run a power offense, he can whack it. He can come down. He gets off of his double teams nice. He has his standing block. He gets to the second level. And he's versatile. So I think those two are guys that we're kind of underrating a little bit, but they could be solid contributors this year.
Why has Pierre-Louis been moved around so much? If he's that good, and I trust your opinion on it, he's been at Seattle, he's been at Kansas City, the Jets let him go. What's the deal with this kid, and why can't he sort of find a home?
That's a great question. I mean, I think that's one that we all want to be able to answer, and I don't think we have that, but if you look at some of the tape that was out there from his last year in Chicago, you can see that the kid has amazing instinct. His first step reads are incredible. His ability to drop into a zone, whether it's, dropping hook, curl, buzz, and flash, or carrying a tight end, I mean, they're solid. So it could be just an opportunity that this kid needs a chance. Maybe he was a little bit of a late bloomer. Maybe he got stuck behind some players in his past where he just wasn't given that opportunity to come out. But it looks like Rivera and Del Rio are going to go out there and play. The best guy wins this position. And you know what? I'm not putting money on him, but I'm not counting him out. That's for damn sure.
What's his best position, you think, amongst the linebackers in a 3-4 or 4-3?
So here's what I think is interesting about him. And we've had this discussion a lot on Twitter. I've discussed it with a ton of fans, but there's a lot of different opinions about how the linebacking core will stack up this year. And here's what we don't know. We don't know how Del Rio and company are going to play their linebackers. Some teams play their will opposite. For instance, Penn State, they play their will as technically a Sam. They reverse the roles. So I don't know how Del Rio's going to do it. I've heard some talk about an inverted Tampa 2, and I know in an inverted Tampa 2, you want your best cover linebacker on the same side as your tight end. But he could run opposite. So we don't know yet. We're not going to know probably until we start to see a little bit of work in OTAs and start to hear what these guys are playing. But for Pierre Lewis, I see him more as an outside linebacker. I think he can play Sam. He's a little bit undersized, but he can get through the mess, and he's a striker. He can come up and he can stack a guard. He can shed a block. He can fire a hole. And in that aspect, I do think he has some versatility. But listen, you can play him as a Mike, and he has covers to put him outside. So you can play him as a Will as well.
And I think versatility is going to be key for anything we do at linebacker here. I think the concern with a guy like Bostic to me is that he's probably the opposite of being versatile. You're going to trust him to maybe a good run stopper, but I'm not trusting him to do a whole lot overall. He's kind of a one-dimensional linebacker in that regard.
Yeah, I agree on Bostic 100%. And, a lot of people have said that Bostic's spot and best spot maybe as a Sam, where you're usually pulling your Sam on third down passing situations. So he's going to be your situational linebacker. Mm-hmm. He could be that guy that you see, kind of come in there for obvious run downs, but when we're putting in sub packages, Bostic could be the guy that comes off the field. You could see a kid like Sean Dion Hamilton, who probably of our linebackers last year, from all the film study I did, is the most impressive of our young linebackers. Mm-hmm. You could see him taking over the Mike role because that kid can do everything. He's smart. He's instinctive. He's fast. He can cover. He could be the leader of the defense, but he's still young. He's still learning.
Well, as long as we're talking linebackers, we brought the old man in, Thomas Davis, and I'm sure he probably has a really great relationship with Ron Rivera. Look, I mean, he got. They didn't bring him back last year.
Right.
I'm wondering how much he has left. Certainly, I think Rivera clearly values veteran presence in the locker room, and that's him. But I just don't know at this point if he can even really play at a starter level or not.
That's definitely going to be the interesting question to see. Does he have anything left in the tank? I mean, I could see him being, maybe like a 30 or 40, percent of the defensive snap type of guy. But maybe being more of a mentor to the younger linebackers, like your Fulcombs, like your, Hamilton. That could be a role, and I know we've talked about Kerrigan possibly playing that same type of role going into the 2020 season. So if you get two veteran presence like those guys on your defense, it can only help.
Yeah, I kind of assumed when he was signed that it wasn't for playing purposes. It's not a team captain, but like a team sergeant situation. Like he's going to be that guy who just, keeps the young kids in line, It
would make sense.
Cornelius Lucas. I think this guy's going a little bit under the radar. I've heard some good things about him. I haven't watched any of his film at all. I'm not going to pretend I have, but I have heard good things about how he plays. And given Morgan Moses's, problems, all of his penalties, I'm wondering if Lucas is a guy who might end up pushing him for the starter role. Even.
Yeah, I mean, Lucas.
Yeah, I'm about to say, did you hear me sigh, Steve?
Yeah, I did. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah, sorry, Mark.
No, I haven't started studying up on Lucas either. The only thing that I could parallel him to was all the people a few years ago when we had, big tie in here. Everyone was like, "Oh, you know what? He's just he's a reserve."
Yeah,
he's not a starter. But what happened when some people went down? Ty came in and played great for us. So, he could be that swing tackle. I think we're all a little bit down on Christian right now, and for obvious reasons. He just did not show well last year. He lacked fundamental knowledge to pick up stunts. You would see him just revert to bad habits of waist bending and not moving the feet and not striking with the hands. So I think we're all a little bit down on him. And I assume Rivera and company were watching the same film we have. And if they can see him on film and we can see it pretty honestly, you got to have questions about him. So I think the Luke signing was a signing. He could be a swing tackle. Obviously now with the new rules under the CBA, we're going to probably have 8 linemen active on game day. So that could be huge too.
Okay, well, so with all the other moves, and we're going to get back to them eventually, but we did do a poll of Redskins fans to kind of figure out what the fan reaction was to the Redskins free agent move so far. Mark, the way we usually do this is Steve does the polls and he reads it to Jamal and I, and we have to try and guess what the fans said and what our opinion is. And you're welcome to play along if you like. So,
Sound good?
Okay. So first of all, the polling period was pretty short this week, and blame me for that. Sorry, but it is what it is. So the poll this week was, what grade do you give the Redskins for their efforts so far in free agency? Now, because of Twitter limitations, we can only have 4 options. So the options are A, B, C, and F. No
Right.
D's. So let's start with Jamal. And Jamal, I'm also curious why you were signed about Cornelius Lucas. But let's start with the poll. So what do you think about the poll in terms of your opinion and what the fans thought?
I'll start with the Lucas part. It wasn't about the player itself. It was more so. it was pushing Morgan Moses' part. I know it wasn't like your opinion. It was more so just the suggestion that is a possibility. And I don't see it because I view him as a depth piece, like a swing tackle of sorts, or maybe just somebody who could back up one of those tackles. So that's why I was like, it's like I don't think he's going to be any better than the tackles that we have. So that was my reaction. That was the side. For the poll, though, I feel like the fans will probably vote a C. Excuse me. And I personally would probably vote for a C as well. It's a bunch of, the signing so far, excluding Kendall Fuller, is all about depth. You can see it. They're not necessarily pushing for starters. And I mean, outside of Amari Cooper and maybe I think Demarius Randall was something that I saw earlier. I don't think they made offers to Demarius. I just know that they were interested. But I know they made an offer to Amari. Like you're not really focusing on filling open voids, like clear voids, but more so just making sure you got depth pieces right now. So I can't say that they're doing really good. I can't say that they're doing bad because like these guys aren't necessarily needle pushers. So it is what it is. It's just average.
All right. Mark, why don't you give us your opinion about the poll?
So I was looking for the D option, but you left it out conveniently.
You can blame Twitter, man. Listen, I can't do 5 options on Twitter.
Yeah,
okay?
Twitter needs to.
Dude, I was gonna DM you afterwards and say, hey, where's your option D? That was the one I was gonna say. Nah, but I kid. Listen, I agree with Jamal. I think I would give it a C. The depth is what we need. We have a lot of holes in this team, and to be able to add, what I see is some quality pieces. It's telling me 2 things. It's telling me that A, we understand that this team does not have the adequate depth. We've seen that when injuries have hit over the last few years. And B, we're not 1 year away. And we keep talking about that, but we're not 1 year away. We are probably looking to be competitive in 2021. So this is just adding some little pieces that get us to that point where we can start saying, all right, all these dreams we've taken in the last couple of drafts, they're starting to move up to that red level, and that's when we're going to start to see that. So, yeah, I agree depth is huge.
Yeah.
Alex?
I am actually going to go a little different than these guys. I think that I really like what they're doing overall. I'm going to give it a B. There's a few things I wish they had done and a few things I wish they hadn't done, but I can get into that later. I think the fans are going to be overwhelmingly negative and say F because they always want this 1 or 2 superstars to make an actual difference right away. So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
All right. Well, Jamal and Mark are right. Alex, you're wrong as normal. So you got to take over. Now that Sean's gone, you got to take over the role of always being wrong on the polls.
Someone's got to be the
Sean's
heel.
role.
Yeah.
Someone's got to be wrong all the time. By a vote of 57%, people voted for C. B was next with 31%. F was 10%, and 3% of you out there, the brave 3%, voted for A. Personally, I would have voted for B out of respect for the fact that I think Ron Rivera is kind of executing his plan.
Yeah.
We don't maybe have access to all of it, but it's clear to me he has a plan by the nature of the people he's signing. The only player they really lost out on was Amari Cooper, and if you do an analysis of the money of it, it made sense for Amari to go back to go back to Dallas. Plus, he had a quarterback. His family's, Cowboy fans. I kind of understood it.
Not to mention, paying that much for a wide receiver is a pretty steep price.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about an all-pro level receiver, it might be worth it. But I didn't beg for comments this time, so we only got a handful. But the comments are fairly negative. The people
on Twitter.
No, I know. I'll just read one here. This kind of summarizes it. Kareem, who's at Kareem Captain, just says, out of these choices, an F.
So he's a D guy, is what he's really saying.
Yeah, maybe, I guess. Yeah. So I'll skip the comments for now, but let's. That's a poll this week. Sorry, it wasn't up for very long. It's my fault. So now that we have these guys, Mark, number one. Let's talk about the structure of the roster that you brought up with the color code system, and then we also need to hit the draft because really why we're here is the draft and the needs that remain in the draft. So let's talk about the color code system here first, and then let's talk about what needs remain for the Redskins in the draft.
No, that's perfect. And the color code system is something obviously that Scott McLaughlin. Why am I saying McLaughlin, guys? I'm thinking McLaughlin. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. McLuhan brought it on a couple years ago, when he was talking about the blues and reds. But I've, done a lot of stuff on the color coding system and kind of came up with, a system that kind of parlays what he talked about, but added a couple different colors to it. But
sure.
From what I've read, every team kind of grades their players with a color system. It could be anywhere between 3 to 6. So I came up with the 6 colors that I use to identify our players. So I'll go through those with you guys briefly, and then we'll talk about the roster, and we can kind of discuss where we view our players, offensively and defensively.
Sure.
So, obviously, your blues, they're your blue chippers, they're your perennial football players. Your red, being your top-line starters, your really good football players. Your purples are your solid starters. They're not quite at replacement level yet, but they're solid. They're getting the job done. Your greens are your younger players with upside potential. Your oranges are your backups. They're your replacement players, the guys you'd be looking to upgrade. And then you go down to your yellows. The yellows are really the guys that are lacking the ability and skills to contribute at that level. So when I took that color chart and I looked at our, potential starting lineup for the team, this is what I came up with. So we can kind of discuss and, so Haskins, obviously, I see him as a green. I see him as that guy that has potential and amazing potential. But yeah, he's a green right now. So what do you guys think about Haskins?
He's still a young player. I think that's fair.
Well, yeah, look, Haskins, if you look at his numbers and look at the way he played on film, I think obviously his numbers were in the beginning of the season were awful. It was clear that he just wasn't processing very fast in the beginning of the year. He wasn't seeing the field right. His mechanics are weird sometimes. But by the end of the year, his quarterback rating was up over 120. His completion percentage was up near 70%. He looked like he was understanding the game and the plays faster. So I think he's a young guy with potential. With great potential to be, I don't know if he's going to be an all pro or Hall of Famer, but I think he can still be a franchise quarterback. So I guess that's green then, I guess. Is that where that would fit in your color scheme? It was, yeah. So yeah, I would think I'm pretty high on Haskins' potential, and I think all this chatter about these, players being scared off of the Redskins because of Dwayne Haskins are stupid, and that's just nonsense coming out of 106.7 personally.
Now, I will say, even though I agree he's a green right now, if I'm going to be honest about where I see his ceiling, I don't think he has blue chip level ceiling. Like, I don't ever see Haskins as a Hall of Fame perennial Pro Bowler. I know he's still young. He's got room to grow. I think he could be good. I think he could fall into that red chip category and be there for 10 years or maybe more as a quarterback. But I don't know if he's ever going to get to that level of elite quarterback.
Well, the thing is that he's got the arm talent for it.
He does.
To me, and so if you have the arm talent for it, you can always get there if he's supported right, if he has the right coaching and the right players around him. So I think his future's up in the air. Yeah, for sure. Right now.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, so let's Mark. I'm curious to see who are the Blues, because we know who the Blues should be. The Blues should be the guys who are making a lot of money, ideally. But I don't know if this case, that's really the case. So who are the blue chippers on this team?
So it's funny you ask, because I think we have, well, let's say 2 blue chippers. And they're both offensive linemen, but one of them obviously is up in the air. So I have Brandon Sheriff as our only true blue right now, with Trent Williams being the second, but being that we don't know where his future lies right now. So Trent is the only blue that I have currently on this team.
I think that's fair. I think I remember when we started hearing about this whole color coding thing with Scott McLuhan. He said if you really want to compete, you need at least 5 blue chip guys, right? I mean, that's kind of the mentality he had. And yeah, we're nowhere close to that number. I do kind of feel like, maybe there's 1 or 2 on defense who are getting close to that level. I mean, Steve likes to make fun of me for my Matt Ioannidis thing, but I'm a big Matt Ioannidis guy now.
You're in a relationship with the man.
Right.
You live with him. I understand. You're supporting him. Look, I can tell you this much. First of all, in the scouting room I was in for a particular NFL team, they didn't use a color code, but they had a number system. And they had every player rated by number, and so it's kind of the same setup. They were just using numbers, not colors. So I do think every team does this. The guy who needs to be a blue is Landon Collins. This guy's being paid $84 million over 6 years. They're stuck with this guy, whether or not he plays. He needs to produce, and he needs to produce at an all-pro level.
I was going to say, Alex said something. I forgot about the McLuhan quote that you mentioned. He believes that there needs to be at least 5 blues on a team. But if for all the Redskins fans that's listening now and you heard that, I just want you all to, understand like how significant that is. And actually Mark pointed to it too. It's odds are we're probably not going to be as good as we want to be this year. Just as from a fan standpoint. However, you have to understand that you have to keep in mind the type of people that they're bringing in or the type of people that they're developing. Mm-hmm. If you only have one blue chip, from our point of view, if you only have one blue chip player on our team, and you believe that there needs to be others, i.e. Landon Collins, who has to step up and become a blue chip, you're still only looking at 2 people. And you have to keep building on that number. Like, there are examples out there where you can point to teams who have that, who are at least close to that number. But to be able to compete week in and week out and not in your losses mm-hmm. get blown out of the water, you're competing from week to week, you have to understand that there's a lot more development that needs to go on here. Like, teams can't go from 3-13 or 3 wins or 4 wins to 9-10, but realistically speaking, like you do need to make sure that these players continue to develop and everything meshes well.
Well, what's interesting about this is, none of us have mentioned. Mark mentioned 2 offensive linemen. I mentioned 2 offensive linemen and a safety. Jamal agrees. What's missing off this list are skill position players, ball handlers.
Yep. Oh,
Terry McLaurin. Yeah, Terry McLaurin has the potential to get there someday, but they have nobody in the running back core who's even close to that level. Geis maybe because of injuries, but if you really think – yeah, right. You're right, Jamal. I mean, maybe I'm being too high on him, but they really need skill position. Jamal's been preaching this for weeks, Mark, months, a year. But what we really need is skill position guys, and that's why I think probably why Ron Rivera wanted Amari Cooper is because he needs that blue chip guy as somebody who can handle the ball and make stuff happen.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think if you're looking at our skill positions, how I have them rated, I put Peterson and Geis in there, so I gave Peterson a purple, which is a solid starter, and I think that's pretty fair. I mean, some may argue he's still a red, but I'm taking he's purple. I put Geis at green, 100%, because he's still young and we don't know enough about him. But when you go down to the receiving core, and I'll include tight end in that group, I'm saying McLaurin, he proved himself. I mean, everything we see on this kid is stud. I gave him a red. But then I went down to, I mean, you can probably say, okay, he could still be a green technically, but I gave him a red. I think he took that jump. But Harmon, Sims, or three. Tight end, we have Sprinkle, who I gave an orange, and Thomas, who I gave an orange to. So right there, you're seeing some issues. I mean, we have one red out of all our skill players, including quarterback, and that's important. And he's only a second-year guy. So I have 1,000% agree with that take that we are lacking in the skill position. But if you want to look at a positive spin on that, I think we have a lot of guys who are green who could make that jump to red within a year or two. So I think that's a positive.
I think Steven Sims in particular is that guy, to be honest. I mean, with his ability to make people miss, he's dynamic. I remember watching him at Kansas State before I even knew who he was, going, oh, my God, who is this kid? You know, he can really, really move. Mm-hmm. He may need a little bit of experience, but I think of all those guys, Sims, to me, is the one. He might be a bit of a dark horse for that, but I think Sims is the one. It really kind of makes me wonder the structure of the draft, which is really why we wanted you to tell you, really where we want to go with you, Mark. There's no doubt they need blue chip skill position guys. But the entire Redskins world has got Chase Young on the brain, and certainly we could use him. But they need a whole lot of other things too. Mark, you're laughing because you know how I feel about it, but I'm trying to be objective here.
Yeah, we joke all the time about it.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on the Redskins draft philosophy in general, and then what should they do at number 2.
All right, so I'm kind of torn. You know, I've told a lot of our readers on Hogs Haven that I'm not about to give my true opinion until 2 weeks before the draft. I'm trying to stick to that. I'm trying to, draw a little bit of intrigue to it. But in all reality, I'm a little torn right here. And I understand how good Chase Young is. I've watched him since he was a freshman. The kid is unbelievable. He's a game wrecker at every level. He possesses every athletic trait that you would want in a defensive end/edge position. I think he could play outside linebacker. I think he's that skilled that he can drop the hips and go back. Thankfully, we don't have to deal with that anymore with Del Rio now running the defense. But so here's my mindset: if, and this is the big if that I keep talking to everybody about on Twitter, we have to be open to the possibility of a trade back. I'm not saying we need to. I'm saying we have to be open and listen. So if I'm Ron Rivera and the Bengals make their pick to Burrow, I am sitting there and I'm going to take up the entire, 7 minutes now.
Yeah.
Or whatever we're
given.
It's 10 I'm going to take still. Up that. Is it still 10 for the first and then it's shot? All right, yeah, it could be. I'm going to take the entire amount of time and I'm going to take phone calls. And if someone blows me away with an offer that's too good, then I consider that. And I sit there and I weigh my choices. If Miami wants to come up and they want to say, hey, we're going to give you number 5, number 18, and number 39 to move up 3 spots, am I seriously going to consider that? Hell yes. Hell yeah. Because that's 3 potential reds I can get for my team versus having 1 potential blue. So that's a win situation for me. Now, if Miami comes up and says, hey, listen, we'll offer you number 5 and, maybe number 26 to move back, would I do that? I'm not 100% sure. I may just decide that Young is the best option and say, thank you for talking. But I think we're going to go with Chase here. So I'm stuck. I really am right now. But my philosophy, and it's going to remain that way, is I keep my phone lines open. I listen. I hear everything that people are talking about. I'm not going to go out there and aggressively shop the pick, but I'm going to keep those telephone lines open. If someone wants to come up with Tua and they want to pick the Tua, I'm going to be the guy listening.
Is there anybody else at 2, though, besides Chase Young? Because the way I look at it is, Jeff Okudah is a game changer in his own right. Isaiah Simmons is a Sean Taylor-like athletic freak of nature. And granted, Ron Rivera's they've reworked their entire linebacker core at this point. But those guys are game wreckers also. And my thought has always been, can someone else make a bigger impact on this particular team other than Young that they should be considering? Or is it just Chase Young or bust at 2, if not a trade?
So, I think at 2, if you stay at 2 and your heart's set on staying at 2, or you don't get the ammunition to move out to a trade that you want, it's Chase Young. I think that's pretty simple for me. It's Chase Young. He is that type of game-changing talent that you don't pass up on. But, like you said, if we move back to 5, there's going to be, I mean, we're in desperate need of a cornerback. We're in desperate need of, I would say, linebackers pretty high up there, but offensive tackle, not knowing what's from them. So if you move back to 5, you're going to see one of either Akuda or one of the top tackles, whether you rate them as Worth, Wills, Thomas, however you want to rate those 3, they're going to be there at 5. So if you move back, would I be completely content with Akuda or one of the top tackles in this draft? Yes, if the package is right. Simmons, unbelievable talent. I mean, you can play him at safety, you can play him at outside linebacker, you can play him as a hybrid defender, you can blitz him off the edge, you can play him in the middle if you need to because you can chase time on the sideline. He's so versatile. I think, though, if I'm moving back to 5, the 2 guys I target are the number 1 offensive tackle on the board and or they're my 2 guys if I move back. I stay at 2, I'm taking Chase.
Who's your number 1 tackle? How do you have him rated?
So this has flipped up a little bit for me. I'm a huge Andrew Thomas guy. I've always been an Andrew Thomas guy. You put the film on this guy's a technician from top to bottom. He's great in pass protection. He can maul you in the run protection. He's a All-American. He has it all. He's been my number 1 guy for a while, but I do put Wirfs up there next to him. I think his upside is absolutely tremendous. The footwork on a kid like that, the athleticism, he reminds me of Trent when Trent was coming out of Oklahoma. So I still have I have those 2 guys right there as my top 2. You know, you could call one of them 1 and 1A. I have Wills a little bit further back. Most of these other guys are rating him higher. I don't think he's going to be the impact tackle that a lot of teams are seeing. I actually think his better place is inside the guard. He's a very strong guy, but he has problems with the feet. He also has problems with timing his hand punch to a fixed side. I've seen a lot of those that came up on the LSU tape, which I watched over and over. So I have a little bit of issues with him. I know people say his potential is very high. I agree with that, but I don't think it's as high or he's going to be as good of a left tackle as 2 previously mentioned.
Mark, I want to thank you very much for joining us on the show. To all our listeners out there, make sure that you go and follow Mark on Twitter. He'll be linked in our, show tweet. So just, click on his name and hit follow, you jerks.
It's easy.
Mark, thanks so much for joining us.
We appreciate it, Mark.
Yeah, guys.
Yeah, you have a great
Thanks
day.
for having me. I appreciate it. It was good to talk to you guys. Everyone stay safe and have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Same to you, boss.
All right.
All right, see you guys.
All right, and pause. Oh, he hung up, so didn't get to thank him.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to,
I'll
do
tweet
the
him.
thank you.
I'll
yeah,
tweet
yeah.
him. I'll tweet him and thank him.
Yeah. All right, so we'll come back then. What else do we want to talk about real quick? Where do we want to go from here?
Well, I want to get back to free agency a little bit because, free agency philosophy, the linebackers, and kind of what's left.
Sure.
Okay.
That's one.
Just in case y'all didn't get the text, I do gotta leave in about 10 minutes now. I gotta be somewhere by 1, so I gotta hit the road.
Okay.
Well, you want to say what you're going to say up front then, Jamal? Whatever you have to say.
No, that's fine. We can go ahead.
Okay. Just kind of send, let us know when you're leaving. Send a chat or whatever.
I got you.
All right. Okay. We'll come back in 3, 2. Guys, that was a great little talk we had with Mark Tyler. Very much more of a talk we had with him than our typical interview, I felt like.
Yeah. That's good, though. I like the talks.
Yeah. Well, you interact with him so much on social media. Yeah. I think we all do. And I don't know, Jamal, if you've had as much interaction. I know you technically also write for Hogs Haven.
Yeah, Hogs Haven, yeah.
So, he's kind of like your colleague in a way.
Mark knows what he's talking about.
I'm gonna say we had our first share of interactions. Mark he's a film watcher too, so he's very knowledgeable in that regard and very active with the fans on both Hogs Haven and in the comments.
Oh, really? Does he mix it up a little?
Yeah. He's very engaging. So
I like guys like that for some reason.
Yeah, he's pretty transparent with his thoughts.
That's a good way. Nice way of saying he's blunt.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's not a bad thing. I'm just saying, he's transparent, so you always know what he's thinking. So he doesn't hide from his thoughts at all.
I've been accused of being blunt a time or two myself.
Yeah,
Well,
on the
but
comment
I don't
section,
think that's
never.
necessarily a bad. Yeah, I don't think that's because I guess it depends on how people view it.
Yeah.
Being blunt is being honest, and people don't like the truth sometimes, or
That's
at
exactly
least
it.
your truth. Put it that way.
Whereas I'm usually trying to be, whimsical and sarcastic, and I don't think people figure it out half the time. But that's another
Yeah,
story.
yeah, we talked about that before the show, Alex.
Yeah, we did.
Um,
I might be in a
here's
little
one of
trouble.
my here's one of my blunt truths. Um, what Ron Rivera has done this week is completely remade the linebacker core. If everybody knows, what this shows me, the idea that he signed 3 linebackers tells me that he was immensely unhappy with who they had. Tells
Yeah.
me that he's not confident probably in Cole Holcomb and Sean Dion Hamilton, who are the principal guys left, off of the roster from last year. Tells me that maybe Ryan Anderson might be a defensive end, not a linebacker. I think the key to this seems to me is how much does Thomas Davis have left? Beyond Mark's input on Kevin Pierre-Louis is great because I haven't watched a lot of him either. I don't have a lot to say.
I only
about
was
him.
able to find interviews with him, and he seems like a good guy. But
Well, I haven't watched his all 22 film yet, and I'll get around to it. But it seems to me the key to all of it with the linebackers is Thomas Davis.
Mhm.
Is Thomas Davis still himself, or is he just an old, broken down shell of himself? If he can really actually play still at a high level, I think that dramatically changes the linebacker core because, I think probably the most talented guy is probably Reuben Foster, but he's such a train wreck and he's got injury problems still that you just can't count on him.
no.
And I think Rivera sees that and sees, oh my God, I've got Reuben Foster, who Lord knows what is going on with him, and I've got 2 other guys. And Cole Holcomb, had a lot of tackles last year, great for rookie. Probably not strong enough to be inside, and he's not great in coverage. So what do you do with that?
He's still a green guy on Mark's chart. Is
Exactly. And then you got Sean Dan Hamilton. Sure, but that's just a serious problem. And in lieu of my idea, which was drafting Isaiah Simmons, what Ron Rivera's done is brought in a whole bunch of other guys, and that's great. So, but I think it's critical to note that he's completely remade the linebacker core, and this is going to be an interesting training camp battle. See how that shakes out.
I like I said when we were talking about Thomas Davis before, I really think this guy was more brought in to teach the young guys more than anything else. We have the one thing you can say about this coaching staff is we have a lot of talented linebackers now on the coaching staff who should be able to get the most out of these young guys. Ron Rivera. Was he a Hall of Famer as a linebacker, or did he just play on a lot of great defenses?
He just played on the '85 Bears.
Okay,
defense.
and Jack Del Rio played on a lot of great defenses, good linebacker in his career. So I'm trusting those guys to get more out of Cole Holcomb and all these guys. But I think that you can never have enough veteran leadership when a new coach comes in, and he needs to have guys he can trust. So I liked that move. Pierre-Louis. Everything I read said he was brought in for special teams initially, not necessarily to be a linebacker. But who knows? Maybe he'll impress.
We'll see.
Yeah, that's fair. Alex, special teams has been the key word when you mention Pierre-Louis. And truth be told, I kind of feel that way. Now, Mark did a better breakdown than I could have because I haven't watched him yet at all. What was glaring, and it's the same thing that happened with Bostic, really. What's glaring is the amount of teams that he's been on in his career. If you were better than what your career shows, your career statistics as your actual position, not special teams, but as your actual position, if you were better, then a team would want to keep you at least more than 1 year.
Sure.
It's not going to be just letting you go from team to team. And sometimes it does work out for certain players. The more significant one is James Harrison. Back when he was moving back and forth to other teams, he's the most significant that jumps to my head at that position. However, you do have to just question it. That's it. Just question it. And not necessarily if the Redskins are making a smart move or not. It's more so, can he play the actual position? Special teams, he'll do fine. Everybody he's very respected in that regard. So just pay attention to certain people. To Steve's point, because everything that you all said, I kind of agree with. So I'm just making just fine tuning my opinion. But everything that y'all said, I really agree with. But filling out the depth is important. You always want to have that because some of these guys who played linebacker last year are going to be converting to defensive end. So you still have to make sure that these guys that you have that you want to invest in, they're there, but you also have people who can compete with them. Like he said, he want competition at all positions, all 30. I said 32. Jesus Christ, all 22 positions.
Right.
I don't even know where 16 came in, but all 22 positions. And when you add a guy like Thomas Davis and you add a guy like Pierre Lewis, you're going to get just that with the younger guys that we have. And regardless of what the outcome is, there will be plenty of experience gained learning from a guy like Thomas Davis and John Bostic, who's already been here for a year, but continuing to learn off these guys is very valuable for the younger players on the team too, at that position at least.
And I think it needs to be said that somebody needs to keep Reuben Foster on the straight and narrow.
Sure.
That person needs to be a player. And so having guys like Davis and Bostic around can only help. Because I think if you leave Reuben Foster to his own devices, it's going to be nothing but bad. The other thing I think to take away out of free agency here is the skill position players. Understand who J.D. McKissick is. He's the new Chris Thompson, okay?
Right.
And Chris Thompson knows this, and he kind of alluded to that on his social media, feed late in the week.
Well, he said before at the end of the season he knew he was probably done.
Yeah, but I mean now they brought in a guy who plays the role. I mean McKissick, only had 88 carries, 402 yards last year, but he had 91 targets, 70 receptions, 515 yards. He is a pass catcher. There's not going to be a Chris Thompson on the roster when there's a J.D. McKissick. And I think McKissick, if he works out, has the opportunity to be a big dynamic, if it works out, a big dynamic playmaker for the team that has been missing. And the other thing is what they didn't bring in. They didn't bring in a big-time tight end, Austin Hooper, sorry.
Yeah.
It didn't look like they were even really in it. I mean, we heard through the rumor mill that, the Twitter rumor mill, not anybody came to us, that the Redskins were interested, but we didn't hear about any bidding on him. They were kind of content to bring in Logan Thomas. No wide receiver, so it makes me kind of wonder if they're going to go after a receiver in the draft as a result. But Logan Thomas is an interesting dude, being a quarterback at Virginia Tech. Not an NFL quarterback, but could they use him? Alex, you brought this up, at one point in time. Could they use him in a Taysom Hill role to a certain extent, or some kind of 2020 version of the Wildcat maybe? Who knows?
I mean, it feels like if you've got a guy, and we were talking about this beforehand, he doesn't have an NFL arm, but he threw for 9,000 yards in college. So he can throw a football. Like, you can't just say, we're not going to use that as a wrinkle from time to time. Like, I think you at least have to be open to the idea of trying to find a way to do that, at least 2-3 times a year.
Logan Thomas has an opportunity to be a starter here.
Yeah.
This is the opportunity he's been waiting for. He's been bounced around a little bit. He was stuck around in Buffalo for 2 years, never started. He hasn't played that much. He's trying to kind of find his way, and I think this is the opportunity that he's been waiting for. So, there's nothing but up for this guy if he can get it together. Jamal, have you watched a lot of Logan Thomas?
Not recently. I remember his time in, I believe it was Arizona, and that's when I was really watching him because he played quarterback for some time. It was either. Arizona.
It was Arizona.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm about to say that was when I was watching him. But ever since he converted to tight end, it's literally actually for me he fell off the face of the map. Because I never knew he even converted to tight end. So I don't know much about him since he started playing the position. From what I've read, and I don't like doing this in a sense, but from what I've read is he's a good blocker. So that's all I know right now. I'll know more later, but I mean, it's a good thing because you kind of needed a player like him, and he's young too, to a degree. So when you get a guy like Logan Thomas who has an opportunity to at least As of now, he has the opportunity to go for a starting role. While he can do one thing well, it works out for him. So I do think that they still need to go after another free agent tight end. And you can go for one in the draft as well. It's all options are on the table. This is more so trying to make sure that position is filled out to a T. It's nothing against what's his name, Sprinkle, but you just need to you really need to make sure that position is shored up, because Dwayne Haskins had absolutely no help when Vernon Davis and Jordan Reed. Obviously, Jordan Reed was gone the whole season, but when Vernon Davis went down, like you have no help. Jeremy Sprinkle, he's a blocker.
Right.
Like, you don't want to use him as your main target at the tight end position.
No, there was no plan C or plan D for a pass catching tight end last year.
There was no plan at all.
Yeah.
Here's what I'd remind everybody about Logan Thomas. He's a really interesting mix of measurables. He's really big, 6'6", 250 pounds. Ran a 4.6, 4.61 at the combine. For being that tall and lanky and long and that heavy, that's a pretty darn good time. Okay? I mean, I don't know if he can still run that fast or not, but he hasn't really gained much weight, so he probably is still in the 4.6 range. So he might be, and he ran a 4.18 in a 20-yard shuttle, which for a guy that big is freaking amazing. I mean, amazing. There are corners who don't run that fast in the 20-yard shuttle.
Yeah.
So he's got athleticism, in spades for being his size. So I think he's an interesting prospect. He's not a prospect. I think he has a lot of interesting potential to really grab the role if he can. I think we're probably going to see he's raw and route running, would be my guess, because he hasn't done it much.
Yeah, and when I look at like where he is, and somebody pointed this out, one of the reporters, I don't remember who. If you look at his catch numbers, they're not very good, but he plays more, or he gets a little bit better each season. And I think last season he had just under 20 catches. Am I right?
Yes.
So
16.
If that means that he's in the mid-30s, that means he's a number 2 tight end on most teams this year. Which, you know what, we need a number 2 tight end too. So let's not knock that, because we need all the help at tight end we can get. And I'd be fine with that if that's what he turns out to be. He's got, a 2-year deal here. You let him develop. Hopefully you can add some wrinkles with him like we were talking about. And, yeah, I like the size. I like that he's this 6'6", big kid who still has some athleticism. Like, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, he has potential. And by the way, the team did sign somebody named Marcus Ball, who I don't know much about at all, as another tight end recently.
Not related to Sammy, although I think he's also from Texas.
He may be related to Sammy.
No,
I don't know.
He's not. I looked it up.
So salary cap wise, where we are with this, I did update the salary cap. It's not, as of Saturday when we're recording this, I haven't updated the website, but it will be before Monday. The big problem I have with giving more accurate numbers is we don't have the details of Kendall Fuller's contract. We know it was 4 years, $40 million, but in my world, that doesn't really help us much.
Right. You need the actual year by year.
Yeah, and Thomas Davis is the other one. We don't know anything about his contract. All the rest of these guys, I filled in most of the blanks, and the couple we don't aren't going to matter much for cap-wise. Logan Thomas isn't going to matter. Cornelius Lucas isn't going to matter, because every guy we bring like that is offset on the back end by a rule of 51 guy who drops off. And so the big money guys are Fuller and Davis, who don't know. But I kind of went through and guesstimated with him. I'm going to just guess that Fuller's cap hit is probably in the range between $6 and $8 million. Would be my guess.
Right. So you probably pegged him at 7 then, just between the two.
Yeah, because I mean, 4 years, $40 million. You add a base on, and then the effect of the signing bonus, and I'm guessing between 6 and 8. And then Thomas Davis had a $4 million cap hit last year. I don't think Ron Rivera would disrespect him by asking him to take a pay cut. And I don't think Davis would take a pay cut and sign this early. He would just wait it out if the Redskins made a lowball offer. So I'm assuming his cap hit's going to be about 4. So under that scenario, I've got us right now at under $30 million left.
Which is still a good chunk.
Yeah, between like 20 and 30, depending on how things shake out. The chart I'm looking at right now has 40.98 on it. But again, that's without Fuller, that's without Nate Orchard, it's without, who's not going to matter, it's
Right.
without Davis. So if you add all those in, roughly, add between 6 and 8 for Fuller, add another 4 for Davis, another million in the or so in the rule of 21 or 51 offsets, you're looking at maybe at this point, maybe 27, 28 million probably. So that's kind of where you are salary cap wise.
Sure. And side thing on Fuller, I think we overpaid him, but that's just me. I
Maybe
think
so. I mean, the thing about Fuller is, I mean, he's moved around a lot.
Yeah.
I think he's probably better in the slot. I think he's demonstrated that. But the Redskins need outside corners.
They need outside corners, but I've said before that I value a good slot more than an outside. But
and you and I have a different view of the Redskins corner group, I guess,
right.
on it. I think they've got some guys that can play the slot. What they really lack is talent on the outside, and that's why I love Jeff Okudah so much. But that's another discussion, I guess.
Well, I think long term, you're definitely right. Because we don't have anyone good signed long term. It seems like, but I at least think that this year, if it's Dunbar and Moreau on the outside, that's decent. Not great, but decent. And you put Fuller inside in the slot. I think that's actually a pretty good trio. Which I don't think many teams have a good trio. They might have two good guys. They don't have. Not many have three good guys.
I just think that the top end of our corner group leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah.
If Quentin Dunbar's good, we like him, but I wouldn't put him up there with Darius Slay.
Oh,
For example. We don't have a guy like that. And yeah, Fabian Moreau certainly better on the outside, as he's proven, as we knew that. I said that when he was drafted.
I think everyone said that, and then they kept on trying to put him in the slot, which made no sense.
Well, it's because out of necessity. It's like, where else are you going to put him? When Josh Norman is there playing.
Josh Norman might have been better in the slot than Moreau.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, Norman would have been good in the slot.
Yeah.
But point is, I mean, they really going to need some high-end talent. I think one of these guys like Greg Stroman, Jimmy Moreland, Danny Johnson, Kendall Fuller, I mean, I think one of those guys is going to be good enough in the slot. To me, when you have to face down elite receivers,
yeah,
pick your poison, Odell Beckham Jr., whoever it is, they might be a problem in man coverage. That's my point.
But I think that's going to be, that still would be the case regardless of where you play Fuller. But
I mean, maybe Fuller might be actually a better option than Fabian Moreau on the outside. That's what I'm saying.
Maybe.
It remains to be seen.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting kind of competition to see who gets put where. It's not so much. I don't think you'll see much reordering of the depth chart, because I think we know these three guys are going to be the top three if they're there: Moreau, Fuller, and Dunbar. Unless we draft somebody really high who's really good. So,
well, there's one thing that's a truism in NFL football. It's that the guys who get the big contracts are given the first opportunity to grab the starting jobs, and they're the last to lose them.
Right.
And so you got to understand something here, people. Kendall Fuller has a big deal. He's going to play. No matter what, he's going to start somewhere.
Same with Sean Davis. And, you were going to say Schweitzer?
Schweitzer is the guy. I mean, Davis got some money. Yeah, he's going to play. But Schweitzer, I have his details of his contract. $13.5 million, 3 years. We knew that. $4 million guaranteed. Cap hit $2.5 million. His dead cap is $4 million this year. He's not going to be traded. He's going to play. He's going to start. He's going to get the opportunity, unless he just completely stinks. Wes Schweitzer is your starter.
Well,
they're not going to let a guy with that. I'm telling you, they're not going to let a guy with that much money sit on the bench as a swing tackle. They could have signed anybody for less than that. They don't want a guy they can't cut as their swing tackle. So
he's a guard. You mean swing guard?
I'm sorry, swing guard. Yeah, sorry, guard. I mean, I think you're going to see him start over Wes Martin. I know people don't want to hear that, but I think that's just the financial reality of it.
I think he might get the first shot, but reading up on him, he is a very good guy to be the first guy to come in. But in Atlanta, he did struggle as a everyday starter.
He didn't have a $13.5 million contract in
That's
Atlanta.
true. But
know?
13. We also have to start readjusting our mentality. $13.5 million contract is not what it used to be. Like,
Okay, but
yeah.
granted, but what I'm doing is I'm looking at the guys they have.
Sure,
Okay?
I understand that.
Brandon Scherf, $14 million. By the way, we've gone back and forth this week about Scherf's non-exclusive franchise tag numbers. I didn't do the math myself because I just didn't want to go through the brain damage of it. But the consensus is that the number is 14.78 million. So that's Scherf. The other guys they have: Wes Martin, rookie contract; Ross Piersbacher, rookie contract; Chase Rouillet, small contract. He's the center. So I mean, it's you've got two guys making 14 and 13 million, and a bunch of guys under a million. Who's going to play? That's my point.
Yeah,
that's my point. And in terms of Davis is 1 year, $5 million. It looks to me like that's kind of your classic prove it deal. If you watch, I did watch some of Davis. Davis has a serious tackling problem. He's got range. He's not out of position a lot. He just has terrible tackling technique. He's missed a lot of tackles. It's not because he's out of position. It's because he's in position and he arm tackles a lot, and they either run around him or run through him. He's going to have to fix that if he's going to start, and I think that's why he only got a 1 year deal. It's like, dude, we know you have the ability for this, but it's all the range in the world doesn't do us any good if you can't tackle. And so I think he's got to prove that.
Let's not forget that he's going to have to compete with Monte Nicholson, who knows what happens there, because we all know Monte's good for at least one crisis off the field every year. So,
and also to be said that Monte's deal runs out in 2020 also. So the guess is, absent something in the draft, at least one of those two guys is going to be signed next year, and one of them isn't, between Davis and Nicholson. That'd be my guess.
Yeah. I'd agree. All right, did we miss anybody kind of going through this? We didn't really talk much about Cornelius Lucas, the swing tackle we signed, but I think it's safe to say he's a backup, and like we said, he will compete with Moses.
I don't know about that.
Oh.
We'll save it. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I heard some good things about Lucas from people who watch this film.
Okay.
We'll see.
Well,
I'm saving it for a reason, Alex. I'll tell you off the air.
All right. That means Steve's probably going to be doing a big piece.
No.
No?
It doesn't.
Okay.
No.
All right. Okay, well, I think we've covered everybody who they signed, and you said you give them what, a C or a B for this?
No, I said a B because I think they're executing Ron Rivera's plan pretty good, and the only thing he really couldn't do was get that playmaker in at wide receiver, and so I think they're doing what he wants to do other than that, so for that reason, I give him a B.
Well, and of course, the big mystery that everyone wants to talk about is going to be the quarterback position, who's number 2 and all that stuff.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. Let's mention that real fast. Number one, I'm glad Nate Orchard's back. I'm high on Nate Orchard in terms of depth at defensive end. I think he can play.
Oh, yeah, I like him.
But quarterback, we didn't mention that. Listen, people, they're going to bring a quarterback in. Now, what you said in the beginning of the show, I think it was you or Mark, Dan Snyder's clearly stepped back from this, and the reason we know is that Cam Newton is not a Redskin.
Right.
10 years ago, Cam Newton would have been on Redskins 1 already. He would have been given a $100 million deal. He would, we would have been touting the new era, and Dwayne Haskins would have just been left to dangle. But all the same, when I'm hearing Alex Smith is probably a long shot to be ready, so they don't have a quarterback. They have to bring in a backup quarterback. We cannot find an NFL-ready backup in the draft, at least not a guy who's going to be drafted where they're going to draft him. So they need to bring a backup in. At this point, my guy was A.J. McCarron. He's already gone. Colt McCoy's gone.
He went to the Giants.
The guy we had last year.
Case Keenum went to Cleveland, which I think makes like the 4th Redskin starter in 10 years who's now gone to the Browns, which is a very weird thing.
And the Browns are where quarterbacks go to die.
Yeah.
The two guys that are left, you guys aren't going to want to hear this, but the two guys that are probably the best that are left are Blaine Gabbert and Blake Bortles.
Yeah. Well,
and granted, they were terrible as starters, both of them, but we're talking about a backup here.
Yeah, and I mentioned this on our social media side, but if you look at like the cap percentages for quarterback, right now the Redskins are already kind of high. We're at the 11th highest in terms of how much cap space we're spending on quarterback. The real problem is like the starter caliber guys like a Marcus Mariota or anyone who thinks you're signing another guy who's going to be 15, 20 million, it's just not realistic for what the Redskins have.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Redskins are kind of viewing Alex Smith as sort of a cap penalty right now. It's a
He
sunk
is.
cost. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. But all the same, no, I mean, the Cam Newton thing, I guess we ought to. I know we're over time, but
Yeah.
what else do you guys have to do? You're stuck at home and listen to us.
Right.
Cam Newton, I think, is not the type of mentality. Does not have the mentality you want to bring him in here.
No.
I know some of you out there think that bring him in, he can serve as a mentor for Dwayne Haskins for a couple years and play. That isn't Cam Newton. Okay,
No.
Cam Newton is a little ton of ego. He's going to want to start.
A lot of flash.
A lot of flash.
Yeah.
He doesn't play the way we want Dwayne Haskins to play. He runs a lot. He puts his body in danger, which is why he's had injuries. I think, granted, he knows Ron Rivera. Ron Rivera likes him.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you bring Cam in here, you're kind of giving up on Dwayne. That's my view of it. I don't think that's who you want. The other guy, Flacco, I didn't even mention Flacco. A couple people mentioned Flacco. Flacco peed all over Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, so you don't want that coming in here either.
Yeah, and so when I did some like quick math, I basically came up with here's the amount of money you have left to spend at quarterback, and this will put you at 15% or 16% of the salary cap. It's $7 million. That's it.
And can you think of Blake Bortles or who's the other guy?
Yeah. They would probably sign for less than that.
Yeah. Blake Bortles or who the hell did I just mention, Alex? It's
I don't
right out of my head.
It was another Blake Bortles-esque guy.
It's going to drive me crazy because I just mentioned it just now.
I know who, but it's that kind of guy. It's a failed starter. Dude who probably throws a ton of picks. That's what you're looking at. You're not going to get Jameis Winston in here.
Nor do I want Jameis Winston in here.
No,
look,
he's
dude is a complete knucklehead.
Yeah, I would rather a Blake Bortles than a Jameis Winston. But
I would rather anybody than Jameis Winston. I'd rather them sign you than Jameis Winston.
Well,
and there's a significant amount of the fan base who are really high on Jameis Winston.
I don't understand it.
Blaine
He's
Gabbert
such a
is what I was
dummy.
talking about, by the way.
See, Blake, Blaine, those names are just the same name to me. I don't know why.
Yeah, I always get them mixed up. But, yeah, I mean, Jameis Winston, I just don't think he's got it mentally.
No.
And the idea of him mentoring Dwayne Haskins, it would be like, please do the opposite of what I have done. That's how to mentor. That's how Jameis Winston can mentor somebody. Please be what I have not been.
Ever since that stupid video of him licking his fingers, before the game doing the W, after that I was like, I'm done with this guy. I can't take him seriously.
Yeah. And remember, he was stealing crab legs. And,
I know.
just no, please no.
I mean, I love crab legs as much as anybody, but come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So I think that does it for this week's episode. We went a little long, but we actually had stuff to talk about because thank goodness they let the free agent season go.
I'd like to point out that my buddy Mike Florio, who predicted doom and gloom, predictably was totally wrong. All you people out there, I am going to gloat over this. All you people said, oh my God, it's such a horrible thing. It's terrible. It's a tragedy. How can you possibly have free agency go on in a time like this? Well, you know what? It went off just fine, like I predicted it would. Because you don't need to fly a bunch of people around to do this. You can arrange the NFLPA and the NFL have agreed on a process to getting physicals done in local cities.
Right.
It was fine. Mike Florio, you're an idiot.
I mean, I think this was fine. The draft is going to be weird if they do what they're saying and they're not going to have like a big event. It's just going to look very different. But
yeah, they could do like the draft in Roger Goodell's office.
Yeah, I know. And they used to do that back in the day.
The draft is going to happen. If anybody thinks the draft is going to get postponed at one, they could do it via email if they really had to, like they do the supplement. They could have a camera glued to Roger Goodell's computer screen. Waiting for emails to come in, and we would watch it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know. But anyway,
would have a little tab up there that says,
you just hear "bing" every time.
And he would have to make sure he clears his other, tabs that are open, so he can get rid of like the, girls in lingerie.
Oh yeah.
Who was it that the politician that had that problem?
Oh no, it was a Fox News reporter who just got caught with it. It was Britt Hume or somebody. Yeah.
It was like looking at like,
it was women in latex.
Something like that.
Yeah, it was wild. But
my guess is that the draft will probably be.
It's just gonna be different.
Stage kind of thing.
It's just gonna be very different to see. But anyway, I'm glad that they did this. So we had things to talk
Absolutely.
about.
And I just wanted to gloat
You should.
over Mike Florio about
I think that those people were being overreactive too, and I'm
Yeah.
a little more on the be cautious side with all this than you are.
Yeah, I know.
But anyway, thank you guys for listening. I want to say thanks to Mark for joining us, Mark Tyler. It was great to
Very
have
good.
him on.
Jamal had to go, by the way. We're not silencing him. He had a commitment. He dropped off
Right.
about
Jamal
2 minutes
said
ago.
he had a thing, and he's like, I got a ditch, so
Is
he
anybody
did.
wondering why he hasn't spoken up in the past 15 minutes? That's why.
Yeah, exactly. But again, thanks for listening, and I hope you all stay safe out there.